So whether you've attended a senior preview day or whether you haven't attended a senior preview day, this is going to be info that's overlapping kind of everything that is important to know, at least for where we're at right now in the process, right? And if you have attended a senior preview day, you've definitely heard me mention this idea that financial aid is very much a process, right? And there are different pieces of financial aid that come into play during different parts of the year, different times of the year. Different things are important in regards to financial aid. So tonight we're going to give you some info about kind of where we're at right now, what the process looks like from here moving forward, and then at the end, again, we're going to open it up to kind of any questions that you all have, whether they be general or kind of more specific to Pacific info as well. But really, the idea is just to get you all financial aid information, get it in front of you, get you a human in front of you who works in financial aid, just so that you have that info and can kind of start making some decisions. So we're going to pull up our slideshow here. Okay, perfect. So who am I, right? So kind of like Donna said, my official role at Pacific is I am our assistant director of scholarships and outreach. And what that means essentially is that I do a lot of our admissions events with our admissions folks, and then also work on the back end with a lot of our institutional scholarships that we have at Pacific. And the first thing that I want to go through is kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. So what I'm going to show you is we're going to get an idea of what the financial aid office here at Pacific looks like, what your financial aid counselors, who they are, how to get in touch with them. We're going to talk about the financial aid timeline and the process at Pacific specifically. And then I want to kind of go through and break down what a financial aid package is, what a financial aid package looks like, and what the different components of that financial aid package are, right? A financial aid package is built up of a lot of different resources that come into play from a bunch of different areas. So we're going to kind of break down what those things are, when they come into play, and where they're actually coming from as well. And then I want to talk about some financial aid opportunities, specifically some additional scholarship resources, right? And these are going to be scholarship resources that exist both within the Pacific ecosystem and then also some things that exist actually outside of Pacific as well for students to kind of look at too. And then we'll talk about some next steps. So who are we? Who is the financial aid office at Pacific? And perhaps most importantly, how can you get in touch with us, right? So we are located in Marsh Hall on the first floor. If you've been to campus, or even if you haven't been to campus, Marsh Hall is this building that is actually my background right now. And we are located just in the first floor of this hall. We are open, or in office, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. You can contact us through a couple different means. So we have a main email that students and families can reach us at financialaid@pacificu.edu. We also have a front phone line that folks can call, which is listed here. And then what we also have is contact info for both of our undergraduate financial aid counselors. And what we do for all of our undergraduate students is we split the alphabet right down the middle, and then that determines who your specific financial aid counselor at Pacific is going to be. So for students who have last names A through L, Jennifer Hernandez is going to be your financial aid counselor. And then students' last names M through Z, Stacy England in our office is going to be your financial aid counselor. And I've included their contact info here. And these are really your go-to one-on-one people, right? All the way from now, from really the point of even before you were admitted, right? When you were looking at applying to Pacific, all the way through to when you are a senior, and even in some cases after you've graduated, if you've got questions about your financial aid after you get out of here as well. So I love this approach, right? This gives you a one-on-one real human to discuss your financial aid with, and a person who's going to be a repeated contact for you, right? I went to a larger state school, did my undergrad at a large state school, and a lot of times when I went to the financial aid office, what happened was I would go in and I would talk to a different person every single time I actually went into the office to chat with someone. And so what that looked like was a lot of times having to repeat information that I've said before or go over the same circumstances that I've talked about with folks who work in financial aid at the same institution. And that doesn't happen here at Pacific because you're going to have a one-on-one go-to person who you're going to work with the entire time that you are a student at Pacific. So start reaching out to your counselors, right? If you've got questions about financial aid now, you can start getting in touch with these folks and they'll go over kind of whatever it is that you need. Another tip in regards to just relating to the size of Pacific, if you've got a super, super general financial aid question, if you haven't filed the FAFSA yet and you're starting to go through that process and one of the screens isn't working and you want to know what's going on, calling a small, tiny private school is a good way to get someone who's going to actually pick up the phone and get you an answer, right? And I'd always prefer you all reach out to us with general questions about that than potentially trying to get in touch with folks through studentaid.gov and having to wait on hold for up to an hour or not hearing anything back at all. So, pro tip, if you've got really quick questions, reach out to a tiny school's financial aid office and they'll be able to help you out. Moving a little bit to talk about the timeline that I mentioned, right? And when we think about financial aid, I really think about the start of the financial aid year as being fall and winter, right? Which is usually when the FAFSA or that free application for federal student aid opens up, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. This is also going to be the time where scholarship applications start to open. So again, we're going to talk about these later on in the presentation, but that's typically going to be when scholarships, whether they be through schools or outside of schools, are going to start to open up for folks to complete. Then moving to kind of where we are actually at right now, kind of in the middle of winter, moving towards spring, is really the time where I advise folks to complete the FAFSA. And again, I'll go over kind of when a good time to have that completed by is going to be in a little bit. And then you're going to start to receive official financial aid packages from Pacific. So right now, we're kind of aiming for middle of February, folks having those financial aid packages actually in their hand. And again, we're going to talk about what those are going to look like when you get them. And then also, it's going to be when we start moving towards scholarship application deadlines. So it's when those scholarship applications that folks are doing are going to actually start to be due for students to complete. Then moving into spring and summer is when folks are going to be expected to kind of complete all the required steps for financial aid at Pacific, right? So this is going to be the time to really go through, review your financial aid at Pacific. Also, we still have some scholarship application deadlines that do push right up into summer. And then summer fall is really the time to finalize any of your questions with our office for folks who are potentially looking at additional loans, really finalizing all of that info so that once we get to mid to late August, you've got everything set with your financial aid. You've got everything set on our business office side, and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff once you're actually ready to start classes, right? Because my preference would be once you're actually on here on campus, financial aid be something that, of course, if you have questions, you come and chat with us, but something that exists in the background, right? I don't want you all to be thinking or really stressing about financial aid while you're trying to be a student here at Pacific, and enjoy yourself even outside of classes as well. So like I mentioned, the free application for federal student aid is currently open for 26, 27. This is going to be what we use as an institution, and what pretty much every other institution as well is going to use to determine eligibility for some additional financial aid that can be based on that FAFSA information. One thing I always tell folks is that filing your FAFSA as soon as possible is going to ensure that you are a part of this first batch of actual financial aid awards that gets sent out mid-February. So filing the FAFSA as soon as you can is really going to make sure that you've got that FAFSA actually in, or not that FAFSA, that financial aid package rather, actually in your hands as soon as possible. So if you haven't done the FAFSA yet, I would say my recommendation would be to try to have that done at least by the last week or so of January so that we can get that information on our end and get you a financial aid package bill that we can make it as good as possible with that FAFSA information as well. So once we start building these financial aid packages and sending them out, what are you actually going to get? So there's going to be two pieces. There's going to be an actual physical piece, so an actual mailer that you're going to get with financial aid information from Pacific. And then students are also going to get a digital notice as well. So students are going to get that physical piece actually sent to them in the mail. It's going to arrive to you all. It's going to be a envelope with some financial aid info. It's going to have an additional pamphlet with some additional info for our office, and then your actual paper financial aid package as well, which we'll break down a little bit later on. And then next, what's going to happen is you're going to get a digital notice as well from our office, which is going to include instructions for how to log into your online portal, which is where you're going to really interact with your financial aid largely as a student after getting that physical financial aid package, and where you'll go through and actually finalize everything so that everything looks okay once we kind of get to May 1st to accept your deposit to Pacific, and then also make sure that your financial aid can actually post to your student account in the fall. So that digital piece, we're going to do another kind of workshop where we really dive into what this process looks like once you actually have that financial aid package and kind of next steps from there. But some preliminary info is essentially what that digital portion is going to ask you to do is to go through and either accept or decline every single piece of financial aid that's actually on that financial aid package, right? So you'll go through, you'll accept all of the scholarships, and then you'll have the option to accept or decline any potential loan eligibility that you might have from the FAFSA or potentially other resources as well. Then there'll also be a portion to actually digitally sign that financial aid offer letter to kind of finalize everything. Another really important piece, and again, we're going to go over this in a lot more detail once we go through this session later on in March, where we can look at the digital piece of your financial aid packages. Sometimes what happens specifically with FAFSA information is students fill out the FAFSA, that information comes to schools, and then schools sometimes can be asked to collect additional documentation from students and families to finalize or confirm information that's on the FAFSA. So if you get into your financial aid piece online and it says that there are required documents for our office, usually what that means is that we are being asked by the feds to collect some additional documentation to confirm financial aid eligibility, essentially. Finally, what that online portion will also let you do is report any outside scholarships to Pacific. So if you apply for and know that you're receiving an additional scholarship, whether it be through your high school, your school district, a parent's place of employment, there is actually a place online where you can report that info to our office, and then we can add it to your financial aid package. So it'll show as its own individual line item on your financial aid package online. Next, the piece that is going to be at least the most important bit, the earliest, right? This is going to be that physical financial aid letter that folks are going to get actually in the mail. And we're going to go through and look at this a little more up close so you can get some more detail. But again, that physical piece, you're going to get an envelope with your actual financial aid package. And then you're also going to get a trifold pamphlet that's going to have some additional resources and additional info for everything that's actually on that financial aid package too. So kind of zooming in here, what are we looking at? So on this financial aid package, really it's broken up into two different sections. And actually, let me go back. So this top section here is where you're going to see Pacific's estimated cost of attendance for the year, right? And then under that is where you're going to see all of the financial aid that's being offered for the year. So again, when we look at a cost of attendance, I've talked about this in senior preview day just a little bit, but essentially what a cost of attendance is it is a estimate of every single piece that's going to be both billed by an institution, and then also has some things that actually aren't going to be billed by the institution that schools are required to include in their cost of attendance. So if you look on here, these indirect costs, and these are the things highlighted in yellow, are pieces that schools are required to include in their cost of attendance, but that aren't ever going to actually show up on a bill from Pacific, right? And this is good to know not only for Pacific's financial aid packages, but also for financial aid packages from other schools, right? Because it happens all the time. We have folks who reach out and say, hey, I see that on here there's a transportation charge for $800. We tell folks, oh, okay, that's actually not something that's going to show up on the bill from Pacific. This is just an estimate that schools are required to provide that folks may spend on that throughout the year, right? These costs for the indirect things are going to really vary from student to student and sometimes even institution to institution, right? So this estimate for books and supplies, right? This could vary depending on what courses you're taking, what textbooks you need. So just know that this is going to be how things are broken up on this financial aid package specifically from Pacific University, but also a good thing to look out for when you start getting financial aid packages from other schools. Schools are required to make it pretty clear what your direct and indirect costs are So if you are viewing and trying to compare financial aid packages from schools and are having a hard time distinguishing between Pacific's financial aid piece and one from another school, definitely reach out to either your admissions folks or financial aid folks, and we can kind of look at that with you and go over to make sure that we're looking at actually the right numbers. So next, what's going to be on that financial aid package is going to be, again, all of the financial aid that a student is being offered. So the way that we like to break this up is make it really clear what pieces on that financial aid package are going to be scholarships and grants, right? So things that students get that they do not have to pay back. And then also a section that's going to have all of the potential loan eligibility for folks who do file that FAFSA. And those, of course, are going to be funds that do have to be repaid, right? You're also going to have two final figures on that financial aid package. So you're going to have your estimated cost to attend minus gift aid, which essentially is just the cost minus all of your scholarships and grants. You're also then going to have your estimated out-of-pocket costs down there at the bottom if using all of the financial aid offered. So cost minus all aid, which is going to include any loan resources that folks are eligible for as well. Talking about some of the things that folks are going to see on those financial aid packages, right? So financial aid kind of as a whole is broken down into a bunch of different criteria and classifications. The way that we kind of break it down is going to be things that are merit scholarships and things that are going to be need-based grants, loans, and work study. I've also included too on here the criteria for students to renew these pieces of financial aid. So merit scholarships. So these are going to be things like that Pacific Academic Scholarship that students are awarded once they're admitted, senior preview scholarship day scholarships, any talent awards, which we'll talk about later on. These are things that are going to automatically renew up to 4 years of enrollment at Pacific, as long as students maintain 2.0 GPA and 67% of attempted credits each semester. And with that 67%, the way that I break it down is if you're taking 12 credits, that would be just completing 8 of those 12 credits for the semester. And then when we talk about need-based grants, loans, and work study, a couple of the resources that folks are gonna be seeing is there's something that's called the Pacific Grant. There's the federal Pell Grant and the federal SEOG grant, which eligibility for those is going to be determined by completion of that FAFSA. Federal loans, work study, which we'll talk about little later on. And then for any Oregon residents, there's what's called the Oregon Opportunity Grant, which folks can be considered for by doing that FAFSA. Moving back up to this Pacific Grant that folks might see on these financial aid packages. If you've attended a senior preview day, you've heard me talk about this Pacific Grant before. I really like this approach and how we use this grant because essentially what that is that is a grant calculated by the financial aid office on our end using a holistic view of a student's financial aid package. And what I really like about it is that it allows us to get some additional grant funding to students who do have demonstrated need from that FAFSA, but who say fall outside of eligibility for things like the Pell Grant, Oregon Opportunity Grant. So really allowing us to get some additional financial aid or some additional grant aid rather to students who kind of fall within that tricky FAFSA range of not qualifying for any federal grants, right? One other thing I always like to plug about the Pacific Grant is for it to renew, we do require the FAFSA to continue to be filed. But we're not going to lower that amount if FAFSA information changes every year. So I always tell people you could come into Pacific and have a $3,000 Pacific grant. Your family could win the lottery and then you refile the FAFSA the next year. That Pacific grant isn't getting touched, right? So it's going to renew for up to 4 years at that same amount every single time, regardless of any potential changes or increase in income. Moving a little bit to talk about some scholarship resources. So I know that the scholarship search, I think, for folks can be tricky, right? And to not mince words, I think it can really be frustrating for students. I think you hear a lot of times people talking about how there's so much scholarship money every single year that goes unused. And I remember it being a student who was applying for scholarships thinking, where are these scholarships? Because I can't find any, right? And I know that it can be tricky because it feels like a lot of those bigger websites like scholarships.com is another big one that I know folks use. There are a lot of really good resources on there. Be really tricky because what you have to do is really, really hone in what you're applying for And we'll talk about that in the next couple slides too. But the first thing that I always want to plug are scholarship opportunities that are just for students who are applying to Pacific. So this webpage that I have linked here, and I'll make sure to throw this in the chat after I'm done with this presentation, is to our scholarships for our incoming undergraduate students. These scholarships opened on November 1st. They have a March 1st deadline of this year. There are a whole bunch of different opportunities for students, right? Whether they be talent awards, which usually students who have some sort of involvement in an area will apply to these. There are a couple other scholarships on there as well. So definitely check these resources out, right? It's a really, really good way to show interest in Pacific. It's a really good way to get some additional money on that financial aid package, right? These tend to range kind of anywhere from 2,500 up to potentially $7,000 to $8,000 a year for up to 4 years in some of these scholarships. So they're really good resources to take advantage of. You've got until March 1st. I always tell students, I don't send this info off for our departments and committees to review until after the deadline closes. So if we get to late February and you still haven't applied yet, don't feel like you have less of a chance of getting something or like it's actually too late in the game to start applying. You can still be considered, get applications in, but do them now, right? Get them out of the way, apply for as many as you want to be considered for, or as many that interest you as well. So take a look at these resources. And again, I'll throw these in chat after I'm done here. And if I forget to, definitely feel free to remind me. Another thing that I want to plug when moving to talk about scholarship opportunities outside of Pacific, this one I really quickly want to plug for folks who are potentially Oregon residents. If folks who are on the call tonight are from Oregon, there's what's called the OSAC scholarship application, which is a scholarship application through the state kind of financial aid office, if you will. It is one scholarship application that considers Oregon residents for, I think now it's between 650 and 700 individual scholarships. So when we talk about things for folks from Oregon that are kind of worth your time or bang for your buck in regards to scholarship applications, this is going to be always the first place that I encourage students to start. Um, Next, I'm going to show some resources for some scholarship search engines. Please only use free search engines, right? Do not pay for a scholarship search. Please do not pay someone to search for scholarships for you. College already costs money, right? College can be expensive. It can be an investment. So please do not also pay for scholarship search engines, right? There are good ones out there that are free. With that too, I always tell students, try to pick one or maybe two to really hone in on. You have a lot of things going on, right? You've got a bunch of stuff going on your senior year. You're going through the entire college application process. And I'm cognizant of the fact that as much info and stuff that you get from Pacific, depending on how many schools you're looking at applying to, that could be times by up to 10 or even up to 20 for some students. So there's a lot on your plate, right? Pick one or two of these resources and really hone in on them and dive deep. And kind of like I said, right? The key with these search engines and these databases is to not apply for things that are super, super general, but to apply for things that are super, super hyper specific to you and your interests. I can pretty much almost always guarantee that if there's something that you are interested in that you like doing, whether it is in the classroom or whether it's outside of the classroom, there is a individual, there's an organization that wants to give you money for that thing. When I was a financial aid counselor at Pacific, I had students who pulled in scholarship money for unicycling. I had a student who got a Celtic dance scholarship her junior year when I was working with her at Pacific. So there are a ton of resources out there. It's just a matter of honing in and again, making them as hyper specific to you as possible. One I want to shout out, this last one, Kaleidoscope, is one that I had a senior last year show me that he was finding a lot of success with. This one, once you go in and make an account, it prompts you to kind of make like an interest profile and it matches you, and you can search by a ton of specific criteria. So try that one out if you haven't yet, or if you've messed with some of these other ones and haven't had a lot of luck, definitely try that out. It's been one that I've had some students find some luck with. Transitioning a little bit to talk about some additional loan resources. So These additional resources are going to be options for folks to pull from outside of any financial aid received from Pacific and outside of any federal loan eligibility that a student might have through the FAFSA, right? And when you start getting information from schools, you're going to start to hear these two things. You're going to hear it broken down into two different camps, right? So you're going to hear schools and financial aid offices talk about the Parent Plus loan, and then you're also going to hear a lot of info about private student loans. And really, the big difference to know between the two is that that Parent Plus loan, kind of like it says in the name, is going to be borrowed by the parent of a dependent undergraduate student who has filed that FAFSA, whereas this private student loan is going to be borrowed through a private lender in the student's name. However, you'll see that bullet point there. These private student loans typically require an actual credit check that's ran. So usually students who are traditional first year entering freshmen into college are going to need some form of cosigner on those loans as well. So just some resources to be aware of. I have got a couple links that I'll attach after we hop off here as well, just so you have them that kind of catalog both of these resources for folks to look through and to kind of go through and look at what the options are, see what's going to be the best fit, right? I know I would say a question I get a lot is what the split between these two options are for folks who do borrow, right? I think historically, I've seen more folks lean on the side of Parent Plus loans. And I think a lot of times the reason for that is that just like with the federal student loans, that Parent Plus loan can have its repayment deferred while a student is in school. However, I think now that we're finding to kind of be competitive with that Parent Plus loan, a lot of these private student lenders are doing the same thing where they're having those loans actually deferred while a student is still enrolled. So nothing you really need to dive deep in now, but just want to have these on folks' radar and also share some kind of preliminary resources for you to kind of start browsing through and thinking about in the case where folks are going to be doing some additional borrowing outside of the financial aid that's offered on the package. One of the last things I want to plug, and I always tell folks you get a lot of info from me in these financial aid info sessions. I throw a lot at you. Despite as much as I try not to, I know that the world of financial aid has a lot of weird federal jargony words that don't always make the most sense. This is always, always, always the most important piece of information that I offer students and families. And that is that yes, the FAFSA asks a lot of questions. Yes, the FAFSA can give institutions an idea of where folks are sitting financially. But the idea that it is a holistic and complete picture of a student and family's financial situation is silly, right? And I don't like to pretend that it isn't, right? So knowing this, one thing that financial aid offices have the flexibility of doing is actually considering things that don't show up on that FAFSA in regards to making financial aid decisions. And this exists as a reality whether we're looking at potentially making any changes to actual FAFSA information, or if we can't use it to make any changes to the actual FAFSA, using it on our side here at Pacific to make some additional institutional aid offers potentially based on that information. So in regards to FAFSA information, right? The FAFSA always uses 2 years prior tax income info. So, for example, 26-27 FAFSA, the FAFSA for this upcoming fall, it's pulling tax information from 2024 instead of 2025. One thing is that if there have been changes on a 2025 tax return, or if there will be changes once folks file their taxes for 25, this is information that we as a financial aid office are absolutely allowed to take into account in regards to building a financial aid package. So, big thing to know, we always are required to send that initial preliminary financial aid package based on the first round of FAFSA information that comes to us. But after that, after we send that package out and we have that FAFSA information, if there are changes that we can make on our side, we're permitted to do so, right? So whether folks have had changes in income level, if there's been a job loss over the past couple of years, if folks have medical expenses that aren't covered by insurance, these are the kind of things that our office really, really, really wants to take into account. And even if it's something that's a piece of your financial picture and situation that isn't on this list, if it is a very real factor and something that is affecting the day to day in regards to finances for you or your family, that's something that we want to know about, right? Because it's something that our financial aid counselors, something that us as an office want to see if there's any way that we can consider that, right? And use that in regards to either making updates to the FAFSA or any additional changes on our side. So please, if there's anything that's coming into your head, or if you are curious if it's something that we can consider or not, start reaching out to Jennifer and Stacy, right? These conversations, there isn't a point where they're too early to have, right? You can start reaching out now, even if there's no changes we can make currently. A lot of times, what happens is to make an actual change, we're required to collect some sort of documentation from folks. So if you reach out now, it can allow our counselors time to get back to you with what info is going to be needed, when it would be good to get that by, so that once we can start making these actual changes, we have everything we need to get an updated financial aid package in your hand as soon as possible. So please reach out to us, right? Financial aid is not a one size fits all. Financial aid can be overwhelming. Financial aid can be discouraging sometimes, right? I think it can be a confusing process for students and families, and the FAFSA itself can be a confusing and daunting process. So you all knowing that you've got folks here at Pacific, whether it be your admissions counselors or whether it be me, folks in the financial aid office, I think you all knowing that you've got resources here, that not only are resources in regard to providing information, but that are resources in regard to fighting for you all, right? To again build as great of a financial aid package as we can. And it's hard sometimes to do that without having the whole picture, especially if there are big things or big pieces of information that that we're missing, right? A big thing on our side is again just that individualized approach. I think financial aid historically as a field and as a piece of the college application process has been largely transactional, right? You apply for admission to a school, you get a financial aid package, and the financial aid office kind of washes their hands clean of interaction and involvement with you. And I think that has to change, right? I think financial aid needs to be relational, right? We need to treat it like we treat other offices on campuses, right? Where you're working with us, we're kind of sitting down, having actual conversations, and brainstorming to come to solutions. So definitely reach out if there's anything that you want to start conversations with Jennifer or Stacy, and let us know if there's anything that you want us to know about as well. Okay, that's kind of all of the information that I've got that's scheduled programming. Again, this is where our office is, Marsh Hall, so we're just on that first floor. If you actually walk through these doors, if you turn immediately to the right, you'll see the front desk for our office. Again, financial aid at pacificu.edu. That's our phone number. Get in touch with us, right? If you have questions about the financial aid process, if you have questions about timeline, questions about resources, scholarships, or again, if you've got questions that are just super general, hey, what does this mean on the FAFSA? And you want to get a really quick answer, shoot us an email, give us a call. We pick up the phone, right? So reach out to us, let us know what you need, and let us again be a resource, right? Because you've got people here at Pacific that are paid to be a resource for financial aid and to help make it as understandable, digestible, and accessible as we can, right? Or as much as we can with financial aid, rather. So yeah. And I know now we'll open it up to any general questions. I'm sure that there's stuff I potentially missed in chat as well.
Griffin, question,
Yeah.
bro. For students, for families that have students in private schools and are paying tuition for private school education, um, the process for that.
Yeah, really good question. So if you have got siblings, specifically younger siblings who are attending a private school that's high school, middle school, elementary school, that is something that we can also take into account in regards to making any changes on the FAFSA. And what's needed for that, and this is I know where timeline can get tricky, is we actually need tuition information for the school year that we're making changes to the FAFSA is for as well, right? So for example, if we're making changes for this upcoming fall, for that, we would need tuition and cost information for 26-27 for whatever private school it is. I know a lot of times at this point in the game, folks don't have that yet. So sometimes what we're able to do is if you've got kind of a rough estimate, we can play some rough estimates on our side. And then once you actually get that information, hopefully as soon as possible and definitely before you make a final decision, that's something that we can change as well. So good question, Jeff.
Yeah. Thank you, Griffin. I mean, you definitely took us through the timeline and provided options. I think that's where financial aid gets overwhelming is that families feel like there are no options, there are no opportunities to bring the costs down. And really glad that you took families through that entire process for them. And also if there's some additional questions, they can definitely reach out to their financial aid counselor directly and talk to them about some of their concerns. On the reverse side, what Uncle Jeff mentioned, what if a family has a student who's in grad school that they're still providing a tuition payment for? Like, how does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah, really, really good question. And again, that is a situation where that isn't something, unfortunately, that we can take into account for updating FAFSA information. But again, that is a very real and heavy piece of a family and student's actual financial picture, right? So while we couldn't jump into the FAFSA, plug those numbers in and actually make those changes, that would absolutely be something that I would encourage you to reach out to your financial aid counselor about, just so that they know that information, they can have that info on our side, just to make sure that we have that holistic view when we're looking at making decisions for specifically institutional funds on Pacific's end.
Yeah, and Griffin, when do you recommend? I know some families are like, do we wait till we have the financial aid package in our hands, then we have some conversations, or do we have that conversation now? When is it kind of appropriate to have to reach out about these some of
Yeah,
those circumstances?
yeah, really. I mean, the answer is whenever you're ready, right? Like I know sometimes folks do want to wait to see what that first round financial aid package looks like before going through that process. Because, I know that a lot of times that process can involve digging up potentially documents and things that you don't have just lying around on the coffee table, right? It takes some work sometimes to scrounge up the info that our office needs to get together. So if you want to wait until you get that first round of that financial aid package, that's absolutely okay. It's not a once we send a financial aid package, and that's another actually really big piece that I want to emphasize is a financial aid package is never set in stone, right? Like once you sign your financial aid package and we get you all finalized for the fall, great. That means that everything is good to go. But what that doesn't do is lock you out of additional financial aid resources, right? So there's never going to be a point in the entire financial aid process at Pacific where we're going to hit a point where, okay, after this day or after you do this step in the process, we can no longer add additional things to your financial aid package. And actually, that goes in regards to these changes in circumstances too. If you are a current student at Pacific, if you come to Pacific and during fall semester something happens that changes your financial picture, again, we are still at a point where we can make those changes actually for that current year too. So really, what time is best? I would say now all the way up until whenever you're ready to talk to us, right? Like don't feel like it's too early to start reaching out to your counselors. Because again, at this point, we're going to send that first round financial aid package. But after we get those out, really what we're largely going to be doing is having these conversations with families and going back and forth to see what else we can do.
Yeah, no, that's really great, Griffin. I'm glad, like, like we always tell families, like, we don't know unless you tell us and share with us. And I know we're always sometimes embarrassed or overwhelmed by our situations, but we're here to help. And I think that's what we tell families, like, tell us, let us know what's going on so we can best support you and your family to this investment that you are making. A question that came up, Griffin, is kind of going along the loans. This particular student qualifies, as they know, for the 5,500 student loan. Their parents were able to qualify for their particular grad programs of a larger amount. What causes that difference between a student and a parent loan, or a parent purchasing a loan for them and their education? And is there opportunity for them to apply for more loans as a student in their name?
Yeah, yeah, really good question. So that 5,500 is going to be the maximum that incoming first year students are permitted to borrow by completing that FAFSA. And, you know, that amount does increase a little bit year over year as folks go through the different years of their schooling. So once folks are considered a sophomore based on credits, they can borrow up to 6,500, and then once students are juniors, seniors, they can borrow up to 7,500. And this is tricky, right? Because those amounts are the same for students across the board, right? So students who complete the FAFSA, it's the same amount across the board. And where it gets tricky is that the amount or the distance that those amounts go varies heavily depending on institution that folks are applying to, right? So the amounts aren't skewed or varied based on actual cost of attendance for an institution, which can get tricky once folks start looking at any remaining costs. So additional loan options outside of that 5,500 amount are going to be through those two that I mentioned, right? So there is that Parent Plus loan, which again is borrowed in the parent. And then for students, that's going to be those private student loans through private student lenders. And Pacific has a resource that, again, I'll attach here in the next couple minutes in chat that catalogs actually every single private lender we've ever had a student at Pacific acquire a loan through. So it's a list of curated lenders that students who have attended Pacific have gotten an actual student loan through, in addition to that $5,500 amount. Um, there are some opportunities through those loan resources for students to apply potentially without a cosigner for folks who don't want to have any parent involvement with those loans. But just anecdotally speaking, from working with folks, I know that sometimes it can be tricky for incoming first year students to get approved for those no cosigner loans, specifically if they don't have any credit history or anything at all. If you've got a pretty solid credit history, that's a totally different story because those loans are going to be actually based on doing a credit check. But for folks who don't, that's going to be where a cosigner is going to be needed.
Yeah, I know my sister and I both attended Pacific, and I know when our parents took out the Parent Plus loan because they have the credit history like Griffin is mentioning. I know that when we did graduate, it was kind of one of those agreements I had with my parents that once we have a job, we're going to help pay that Parent Plus loan together to bring down the payment because they were also paying for a mortgage and other things. So I think have that conversation as a family of what is re financially realistic for your family, what you're looking for in terms of payment plans. Have a conversation about degree you're getting and being able to pay back and support each other to bring down the student loan. I think that's where families need to have that discussion so that students can say, hey, I'm realizing that my parents are not going to be paying as much towards my education, so I better apply to scholarships. I better jump on that Instagram that Griffin talks about. I better get some resources. And so speaking to that, Griffin, another question that popped up about the payment plans. So what kind of payment plans are we potentially looking at for students and families when they enroll?
Yeah, so we do have a couple different payment plan options through our business office, and you're gonna get more info about this now, but I know it can be tricky and confusing as the financial aid office works to get financial aid office out or financial aid out to folks, and then we have our business office here at Pacific who actually handle the intake of those payments, so they kind of act as a clearinghouse for any charges that come from Pacific. And they on their end, same deal. They have a bunch of individual folks who they are different roles than like what financial aid counselors are, but they are individuals who students will work with the entire time they're at Pacific. And they have a couple different options. So the first thing is that at Pacific, billing is going to be based on semester, right? So we're a semester school. So you're going to get billed for fall semester, and then you're going to get billed for spring semester. And then within each semester split, the business office actually has a monthly payment plan that folks can enroll in. And so what this does is it splits whatever the semester amount is into 4 monthly payments, right? So, for example, for fall, the first payment date for fall semester with our business office is August 15th. And then on that monthly payment plan, that just splits whatever the monthly amount is into four amounts on the 15th of each month after August. With that being said, I know that sometimes there are scenarios where folks need to extend out longer than those 4 months. And that would be the kind of thing where, again, you go and see the business office, you sit down with Mia or Jamie, who are amazing accountant folks over in the business office, and they come up with kind of a personalized payment plan for you, whether that be splitting it up into 5 installments over the semester, or whether that be actually splitting it up kind of every other week if you've got like a paycheck that's coming in. So they're really, really happy to work with individuals again and kind of have that individualized touch in regards to payment plans. But the automatic payment plans that folks are going to see, the two options are just the semester payment plan, which splits it in two, or the monthly amount, which within each semester, which splits it into four per semester. So eight for the year.
Yeah, thank you, Griffin. I know, with all of this that we're taking in, and we want to be mindful that sometimes you just gotta soak it all in, and then the questions will arise. So the best thing to do is contact Griffin or your financial aid counselor. Reach out to us as admissions counselors too, because many of us know some resources that we've worked with the specific regions that you're coming from. I highly recommend you talking to your college and career counselors at your high schools because they could know some potentially regional opportunities for scholarships as well. And if you need help with writing some of those great essays for those scholarships, please let us know. Many of our counselors will jump on Zooms with students and say, "Hey, let's work on this scholarship," because if we can support you with making sure that the cost of attendance for college is something that is more manageable, we're willing to do everything in our power to help you. So let us know if you need some help with that, those kind of things in terms of scholarship. And just to put in another plug, we're going to have our next financial aid workshop on March 10th. It will be 8 to 9 p.m. Oregon time as well. It's going to be a great opportunity for you guys to understand a step-by-step guide on how to read your financial aid package and letter. Griffin gave a nice overview, but now the financial aid package will, hopefully crossing our fingers and toes, be in front of you. So you're looking at real numbers, you're being able to understand it. So we're going to be on the Zoom again, March 10th. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for putting that in the chat. And please, I highly recommend you share this opportunity, or when we do send the video, send it to a loved one, send it to people that are still trying to figure out how to pay for the cost of attendance for college or Pacific, and we want to help all of you. So we hope to see you on March 10th and help you sign up for some of our senior preview days if you haven't already done so. We have 3 more virtual opportunities to get another $2,000 scholarship per year, and we have one in person if you're here locally or would love to make the trip over. We'd love to see you. But I just wanted to say really thank you so much, Griffin, for your transparency, your support, and your care. And oh, one last question is, when do we expect to see financial aid packages? Crossing our fingers and toes.
Good question. Yeah, so right now our office is aiming to get those to folks by mid-February. So sending those out mid-February, you'll get that notification. And then again, the idea is that once we kind of hit that time, March 10th for our next workshop, you'll be able to hop on. You'll have that financial aid package in front of you. We're going to go through the entire thing, and then we're going to go through what the actual online process looks like too, once you get that information as well. So within the next, I'd say within the next month, you'll probably start getting those notices. So.
Yeah, thank you. And this is the perfect time for students as we're waiting to work on letters or emails to send to financial aid about some of your circumstances. Is the perfect time for you to sign up for a senior preview day, for you guys to reach out to your college and career counselors for scholarships. They're typically due end of February, a lot of these outside scholarships. So utilize this time as we wait for financial aid packages to come out to apply for scholarships. So when you do get the financial aid package in your hand, you've done everything in your power to do on your end to get some outside scholarships and support as well. So please let us know. You do not, so some of the scholarships, the question that quickly came in, you do not always need to have your FAFSA information for some of those scholarships as well. So just take a look at some of those scholarship engines. You might not need to submit a FAFSA. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Griffin, thank you so much for your dedication to helping our families. And we'll hopefully see you guys on March 10th or some of our senior preview days. Thank you so much, Uncle Jeff.
Thank you so much, Griffin. You're fantastic. Wonderful having everybody here. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you, Donna, for being such an amazing host.
A virtual clap for everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for spending time with us. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you really soon. Have a nice evening. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you. You're welcome. Anytime. See you soon. Thank you. You're welcome. Ooh, nice hearts, Uncle. You're always welcome, everybody. Thank you. Have a beautiful
Thanks,
evening.
guys. Have a good night. Have a
Take
great
care.
week.
You're welcome.
Go
We'll see you
Boxers.
soon. Go Boxers! Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Big G. You're the
Bye.
man.
Thank you,
Thanks,
team.
everyone. Good
Good
work.
work, everyone.
Nice job. That was lovely.
Great job.